All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So today we're going to talk about our second P, which is pricing. Recall lecture 6, which was recorded and was available during the midterm week, was pricing. Was product, and this week is pricing. So today what we're going to be doing is kind of breaking it up into two sections. Pricing basics is going to be kind of the first half of the lecture, and then we're going to talk about advanced pricing, and we'll get into a discussion of the survey results as well. So let's start off as we usually do with kind of a formal definition. So what is the price? It's the amount of money that's charged for a product or service. Okay. Now, that's what it is. What is it used for? It's used by the firm to collect value from consumers in exchange for the value that the firm is providing. So when we think about how do firms set prices, because that's the topic of today's lecture, basically, how do you pick the price? We usually think about them as trying to maximize profits, right? Now, for a profit maximizing firm, setting prices to maximize profits doesn't necessarily maximize the current profits from that particular product, because as we've discussed, your consumers aren't just first-time buyers, but you also have repeat customers, right? You have people who come back over and over again. So when we're thinking about setting the price, we're thinking not just about today's profits, but about profits going into the future. So that's what we say, that's what we mean when we say we're maybe maximizing the value of the entire future stream of profits, okay? And then across product offerings, that means that as a firm, we may be offering multiple products at once. So we're trying to sort of balance the pricing of different products, which may be competitors, right? As we saw with, say, Procter & Gamble and its laundry detergents, it makes a ton. They're all kind of competitors for each other, even though they target different segments. And so setting the prices of each one, you kind of want to take into account that it's going to be affecting the prices of the others. So maximizing profits with respect to price, it's kind of a much bigger problem than just picking kind of one price for one product. So what we're going to do today with like the pricing basics part of the lecture is I'm going to kind of talk through the things that the things that should affect how you set your price. And then I'm going to talk through some of the economic tools that we can use to set a very precise price. If we have all the data, what is the price that we would want to set? Oftentimes that's not going to be feasible, right? So for instance, for your project proposals, I'm not going to expect you to be able to come up with the data to set an exact profit maximizing price. So we'll talk about kind of some of the easier things that we can do and that people have done in marketing in the past. So let's begin. Let's start off. I'll ask you guys, when setting prices, what factors should a firm consider? What's important when you're trying to pick that price? So let's answer this question by looking at a few examples. So here we have the price of gasoline from 2000 to 2013 in Ontario, or in Vancouver rather, okay? Now, what we can see from this graph is that it's kind of going up in the long run, but in the short run, it goes up and down quite a bit, right? So the question I have for you guys is, why does the price of gas fluctuate so much, right? Why is the price changing all the time, right? Someone is setting the prices. Why are they changing so much? What do you guys think? Outong says production cost. Maybe demand fluctuations, R&D. Right, so where does the demand for gasoline come from? Mostly from cars, right? And airplanes, right? Now that demand maybe is kind of like explaining why it's sort of gently going up over time. And it might explain why it's higher prices in the summer and lower in the winter. But we see amounts supplied maybe. So the amount supplied, yeah, if there was like a big increase in supply, then you'd expect the price to go down. But typically the price or the supply is pretty stable, right? You have new wells opening and then old ones shutting, but you have huge swings in the price, right? Like around 2007, 2008, it shoots up and then it plummets, right? So let's take a look at the price of the main input into gasoline, which is crude oil. Okay, so this red line is the price of crude oil. Crude oil gets turned into gasoline at the refinery. And we can see that it basically matches the same thing. So if what we think about is why is the price of gas moving around so much, it's a cost story, right? Because the price of its input, crude oil, is moving around so much, right? So the price that we charge depends crucially on the costs of production, right? In this case, the main cost for making gasoline is crude oil. So crude oil jumps around, so gas prices also jump around. So costs are one thing that we should care about when setting prices. Okay, so here's another example. Here we have a company that sells you the right to name a star. And on the left, we have a standard star, which is $29.90. And on the right, you have a binary star, which is like two stars together, kind of that are orbiting each other. And those are $79.90 to name a binary star. Okay, so the price is different across these two kinds of products. Why is the price of the binary star so much higher? Doesn't have anything to do with production cost here, right? Because we're not making stars. They're all just out there. So what are the reasons? Scarcity, so rarity, or maybe it's more attractive. So scarcity is an interesting one. So when I look this up, I find that binary stars are actually less scarce. There's a lot more binary stars out in the galaxy than there are regular stars. So it's not a rarity question, but we see kind of meaningful, unique, more attractive. So what do those things reflect? It reflects maybe people value the binary star more, right? People have a higher value for it, so the company can charge a higher price for it. Right? And why might the binary one be more valued? Well, yeah, maybe because people like the look of it better. Maybe because, these are mostly sold as gifts. So like a wife to her husband, or a boyfriend to girlfriend, or whatever, a partner to their partner. So you have these potential differences in the valuation that a binary star is more valued, right? So that's another thing you need to take into consideration. How much do consumers value the product? Okay, so here's another example. We have Coca-Cola and a report saying that Coca-Cola has started thinking about testing a vending machine that can raise prices for its drinks in hot weather by using a temperature sensor and a computer chip. So why might this be a good idea? Why might Coca-Cola want to increase the price for a Coke when it's hotter? More demand in hot weather, right? So yeah, people's value of a drink goes up depending on the heat, right? It's better to have a cold drink when it's hot. So maybe that's why, right? So again, consumer value. I've never seen a Coke machine that looks like this before. I don't know if any of you have, but I think if they're out there, they're very, very rare. So that seems like kind of a good idea, raise prices when the demand is higher. Why don't we see these Coke machines everywhere? Why isn't this a standard feature on vending machines? How would you feel if you went to buy a Coke because it was very hot and you were thirsty, and suddenly the price was higher? How would you react to that? maybe you're thinking the company is taking advantage of you, right? So maybe it feels not fair, right? Just because it's hot, you're going to charge me more to get a drink. Just because I need it more, you're going to charge me more for it, right? So that's a sense in which people's perceptions of how fair the price is will govern how the company can set its prices, right? And so we saw this in Canada, right? There were reports that some prices of products like paper towels or sanitizer were going way, way up, right? That companies were charging high prices just because they could, right? Because the demand was a lot higher, right? And there were laws against that. Price gouging is kind of what this is called. So they shut it down, or they tried to shut it down because people feel like that's not fair, right? But then we also see this, right? So here's Uber, and they have surge pricing, right? So surge pricing says here, prices are going to be 9.9 times, so almost 10 times higher than normal. But we see this, right? And this is kind of used by Uber, and it's used by other companies too. So why do we see this surge pricing, but we don't see the Coca-Cola? Coca-Cola feels unfair. Does this also feel unfair? So Eve says it may not be easy. Jeremy says surge pricing seems justified, right? And Jingyi says maybe it's a different service. Yeah, so it feels justified. So the Coke doesn't feel justified. It feels like they're raising the price just because they can. And why does Uber raise the price? Well, they raise the price to get more drivers, right? So if there's not enough drivers, then they raise the price that people pay so that more drivers will come and the wait times will decrease, right? So in a sense, they're charging more, but it's so they can try to provide a better service, right? A different service, a better service. So raising prices just because you can, like with the Coke machine or with the price gouging, that's perceived as unfair. Raising prices because your costs have gone up or because you're trying to provide a better level of service, that's not perceived as unfair. And so we think that that's okay. Consumers typically think that's okay, right? So maybe, when we look at the price of paper towels and soap, maybe one of the reasons why we still think it's okay, why there hasn't been, you can read in this article, there has been few repercussions. So there's been no punishment for the companies raising the prices. Maybe it's because people accept that, the supply chain has made costs of everything go up, right? So good. So yeah, for Coke, weather does not affect the supply of drinks or the costs. Yeah, so unfair price changes are ones that are caused by demand, caused by, you need it more, so I'm going to raise the price. Fair price changes are ones that are caused by my costs have gone up or I'm trying to provide a better quality of service, right? So that perception of fairness will also affect how the company can set its price. Okay, so last example, here we have a drug called Lipitor. So this is a chemical compound. It's a pill that you take if you have high cholesterol. This is the best-selling pharmaceutical drug of all time. And here we see the price of it from 2010 to 2014, right? So it's kind of around $3.50 per daily kind of dose. And then around 2012, it drops a lot, right? So production cost didn't change for Lipitor, and the value of the product also didn't change, right? It's still the same drug, So it still solves the same medical problem, right? So why did the price go down here? Maybe people are getting healthier, so demand goes down, so there's less value for it, possible. Maybe they're trying to attract customers. Maybe there was competition, or they decided they could make more money at a lower price. So the story is competition. So with a pharmaceutical drug, when you create it, you have the exclusive right to manufacture it for a certain amount of time. That's called your patent. Once your patent expires, then you can't, then other companies can make it too. And in mid-2012, the patent for this chemical compound expired. Generic companies entered and started selling it much, much cheaper. And so Lipitor cut the price to compete with those companies. So when you're setting prices, what should you care about? Costs, for sure. Consumer perceived value, right? We saw that with the stars and with the Coke. So it could be that people just value the product more, like with stars, or it could be that the context has changed and now the same product, they value it more in this new context. Behavioral factors, right? So price gouging and price fairness, and then competition. So these four things should all affect your pricing. Now, is there a way to bring all of these things together to set an optimal price, taking into account all of these factors? There is, and we're going to talk about it in a few slides. Basically, what you need are two things: the demand curve and the marginal cost curve. And if you have those things, then you can actually, use those objects to maximize profits in a very general way by setting the optimal price. So what are the demand curve and the marginal cost curve? So a bit of like a review from Eco 100. So the demand curve, that's the quantity as a function of price and some other stuff, like maybe income, prices of related goods, attributes of the good, all that stuff, right? So the demand curve takes into account people's valuation. What it does is it tells you at each price, how much would people be willing to buy, right? And if I decrease the price, how much more are people willing to buy? That covers the demand side and the cost side, marginal cost curve. This is just the extra cost of making one more unit. So as I make more and more units, do my costs of making that additional unit kind of go up and up? Do they go down? Do they stay flat? That's the marginal cost curve. So with these two things, you can set the optimal price. But we often don't have these things. They're kind of hard. It's hard to get the demand curve and the marginal cost curve. It requires a lot of data. So typical approaches in marketing are these two, much simpler. There's no kind of mathematical explanation behind why they're the best things to do. They're done often just because they're easy to do. First approach, imitate your competitors, right? If your main competitor charges X dollars and you offer a similar value, charge something similar to X dollars, right? If you think you offer a bit more, better quality, better service, then you charge a little bit more, and otherwise you charge a little bit less. That's one option. The other option is to think about your costs, right? And then add a margin, right? Add a profit margin. So if your costs are, say, Y dollars per unit, then you charge Y dollars times M, where M is some scaling factor that's bigger than 1, right? So if it costs you $10 per unit and you want to have a 100% markup, then M would be equal to 2, right? So you charge $20. So both of these are still fairly commonly used out in industry. In particular, cost plus fixed margin pricing, in the fashion industry, in the clothing industry, the typical margin from wholesale to retail is, yeah, between 100 and 200%. So at H&M or at Zara, if the clothes cost, $2 or $5, H&M will charge $10, right? Or $15. So those are kind of two simple approaches. But now we're going to kind of go back to the economics tools to say, how would you set the price if you had more information about the demand curve, about consumers' willingness to pay? So let's take a look at an example. So let's suppose we have two consumers, consumer A and consumer B, and they differ in their willingness to pay. What's that? That's the maximum price that they would willingly pay for 1 unit of the product. Okay. And let's imagine that each consumer only really wants to buy at most 1 unit of the product. So here we'll assume consumer A, their willingness to pay is $6. Consumer B, their willingness to pay is $4. Together, these two willingnesses to pay form our demand curve from Eco 100, right? We would sell the first unit at $6 because that's what consumer A is willing to pay. And for the second unit, we could sell it for $4. But notice if we want to sell at $4, we're selling both to consumer A and B at that lower price, right? So I can charge $6 and just sell to consumer A here, or I can charge $4, in which case I sell to both consumer A and B at $4, right? So those are kind of your two options. You wouldn't really pick anywhere in between, right? So say you thought, oh, maybe I'll charge $5. Well, then consumer A will buy because their willingness to pay is more than 5, right? So they would willing to pay 6 and you're charging 5, so they buy. But consumer B, their willingness to pay is below 5, right? It's 4. So they wouldn't be willing to buy. So all you've done is you're selling to consumer A, but now at $5 instead of $6. So really, when you're kind of thinking about an example like this, there's kind of two options: sell at $6 or sell at $4. Sell at A's willingness to pay or sell at B's willingness to pay. That's the demand curve. What about the marginal cost curve? So here we have a very simple marginal cost curve. It's just flat. So the marginal cost curve is, it costs the firm $3 per hour to make 1 unit of the product. So let's just say it costs the firm $3 to make 1 unit of the product, okay? That means that the first unit is going to cost $3. The second unit would also cost an additional $3, and so on, right? Remember from Eco 100, the marginal cost curve is how much does it cost to make the next unit, right? An additional unit, right? And here in this course, we're always just going to assume a flat marginal cost curve. In general, it can be increasing, right? An increasing marginal cost would be reflecting like it's costing me more and more to make more and more products. Like each additional unit is costing more than the last one, right? Why might that be the case? Well, maybe you have to start paying overtime to your employees, so it's costing more to get those additional units. Or it can be decreasing, right? It's costing you less and less per unit to make those additional units. Maybe you're learning how to make it better, you're getting more efficient, so it's going down. Now, with these two ingredients, when we put them together, we can set the optimal price. Optimal price, the rule is that we want to sell as long as marginal revenue from the next unit exceeds or equals the marginal cost of making that unit, right? Marginal revenue, that's the additional revenue you get from selling that next unit. And marginal cost is how much it costs. So as long as we're making more than it costs, then we'll make that unit, right? And then we'll consider making the next unit. So here, we basically have two choices or two options for prices. We could either price at $6 and sell just to consumer A, or we could price at $4 and sell to both consumer A and B, right? So which one should we do? Which price should we charge? $6 or $4? Seeing some 4s and I'm seeing some 6s. So the right thing to do here is a little counterintuitive because it's actually going to be to sell at $6 just to consumer A. Now that's going to be true even though, B is willing to pay $4 and it only costs us $3 to make it. So with B, we could still be selling it at a profit. However, when we look at these profits, we can see that if you're selling at $6, then you sell 1 unit, you make $6 and it costs you $3, right? So you're making a profit of 6. If you're selling at $4, that means you're selling both units for $4, right? You're selling to A and B. So you're selling 2 units, but you're selling both of them at $4, right? And that means you're making $8 total and it's costing you $6, right? Which is going to leave you a profit of 2, smaller than 3, right? So you would stop at just 1. The intuition here is that when we sell to consumer A, we're selling 1 unit. And so our revenue jumps from 0 up to 6, right? And that's bigger than the cost, 3. So we're going to make that unit. But when we add another unit, we're going to be selling it at 4. So we'll make an additional $4 from consumer B by selling to them. But now if we want to be selling to consumer A, they're also paying $4, right? There's only one price in the market. So it's so if it's 4, then A is also paying 4. That means that for consumer A, we're reducing the revenue we get from them. It used to be 6 and now it's 4, right? So when we go from A to B and reduce the price from 6 to 4, we're gaining $4 from selling to consumer B, but now we're losing $2 because we're lowering the price for consumer A. So we've gained 4, lost 2. So our gain is only 2, right? So our marginal revenue, MR, is only 2, and that's smaller than marginal cost. So we don't choose to produce B. Are there any questions about this example? And feel free to type in chat, or if you want to unmute and ask, that's good too. Okay. So this is definitely the kind of question that I might ask on the final. Right? How much would you sell? Okay. Demand curves are very useful tools for setting prices because they capture that consumer perceived value. And we saw in an earlier example on the research section in that research lecture that companies will often do experiments to try to create a demand curve so they can try to set their optimal price. But that's a lot of work. It takes a lot of data gathering and it's very expensive. Is there a way that we can try to incorporate insights from the demand curve without needing to learn every consumer's willingness to pay? And, maybe we can just use a simple formula. So there is a simple formula. So if we have a demand curve and we have a flat constant marginal cost, C, then profit maximization is going to lead to the following formula for optimal prices. Okay, so let's break down this formula. P is the price. So P is what you'll be solving for. C is the constant marginal cost. So that's just going to be a number in dollars. And then what is E? E is the price elasticity of demand. Okay. So the price elasticity of demand, what is that? It is a number. It's just a number. It's a positive number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. And what it gives you is if I increase price by 1%, how much does quantity decrease by? Right? And we calculate it by computing the percent change in quantity divided by the percent change in price, right? Now, to compute it, we need to have a little bit of variation in price. We need to be able to say, like, there's an old price and there's a new price. So when I increase the price from the old to the new, how much does quantity change by? And then I can compute the elasticity and see, is my price optimal or should I change my price? Okay. So the elasticity combines information about competition, about income, about context. Everything that's contained in the demand curve will be summarized by the elasticity term. How do we find it? We run an experiment. So Ryan asks, why is there a negative in E? Why is this number negative percent change in quantity over percent change in price? So maybe in some of your courses, you don't have it as negative. When I learned it, it was always elasticity is just a positive number, and you use it in this formula. So that's how we're going to be doing it in this course. Elasticity is always positive, and yeah. We just view it in absolute terms. Yeah, so the elasticity is always, it's always going to be negative when you compute it, right? Because an increase in price is going to lead to a drop in quantity. Exactly. So that's always negative. So we're going to put the negative in front to turn it positive, right? To negate that negative. So let's take a look at an example. Here we have an Apple Watch. And what we know, let's say we're working for Apple, we're a consultant. The marginal cost of an Apple Watch is $100. So C is equal to 100. And the price of the Apple Watch is $300. Okay. That's how it currently is. Now, Apple's surveys say, if the price were raised from 300 to 350, the quantity purchased would decrease from 4 million to 3 million. So they ran a survey, and these are the numbers they came up with. So the question is, what price should Apple charge using the approximately optimal formula, right? So we're currently at 300. Should we change that, right? And to try to help us understand whether we should change it, we ran this survey, right? That describes basically, if we raise the price $50, people say that they would buy that much less. So what we want to do is use this formula, P minus C over P equals 1 over E. We have C, that's 100. We need the elasticity E, right? And that's the negative percent change in quantity over the percent change in price. So how do we compute that? In this course, we'll just use simple percent changes. So none of kind of like the midpoint percent changes. We'll just use simple percent changes. And we know how to do that from algebra, right? If a number goes from, say, like we start at 80 and it goes to 90, how do you compute the percent change? Well, it's just the new number 90 minus the old number 80 divided by 80 times 100, right? So the percent change is going to be the new number minus the old number divided by the old number. So the percent change in quantity that we get from this survey is going to be 100 times 3, the new sales in millions, minus 4 divided by 4. And when we do that math, it's just negative 25%. So the quantity decreases by 25% if we raise the price by 50. And what percent change of price is that? So we'll take 100 times the new price, 350, minus the old price, 300, divided by 300. So for a 16.6 increase in price, we're going to lose 25% of our sales. And so for the elasticity, it's negative 25 over 16.6, and that's equal to 1.5, right? So Aryan says it's elastic, so they should not change the price. That's not necessarily true. So an elastic, if it's greater than 1, our formula may still ask us to kind of adjust the price compared to where it started at 300. If we are inelastic, if we're less than 1, then there's kind of a clear recommendation, but from like knowing that from monopoly pricing and economics, we won't go into that today though. We'll just deal with this formula. So at an elasticity of 1.5, what we do is we take our formula, P minus C over P equals 1 over epsilon, or 1 over E, and we rearrange it to solve for P, and then we plug in our quantities. So C is equal to 100, elasticity is equal to 1.5. We end up with P is equal to 300, okay? So in this case, our optimal price formula says we're good at P equals 300. That's the optimal price that we can set given people's sensitivities and given our marginal cost of producing the watch. Let's try to understand the intuition behind the formula a little bit more. So when we look at this formula, so elasticity measures how sensitive a consumer is to a price change, right? If E is bigger, then a 1% change in price leads to a bigger change in quantity, right? E of 1.5 says 1.5% increase in price leads to a 1.5% drop in quantity. If E was 3, then a 1% increase in price leads to a 3% drop in quantity, right? So more sensitive. Raising the price leads to a bigger drop in sales for a bigger elasticity. Okay, so now when we look at the formula, we can see on the right-hand side, we have 1 over E, right? 1 over E. So as E gets bigger and bigger, the right-hand side gets smaller and smaller, right? Now on the left-hand side, in the numerator, we have P minus C. That's like your markup, right? That's the difference between the price you charge and what it costs you to make it. As E goes up on the right-hand side, and so the right-hand side becomes smaller and smaller, becomes closer to 0. For the left-hand side to still be equal, P minus C also needs to shrink. So as people become more and more price sensitive, as E goes up and up, P minus C becomes smaller and smaller. So our markup goes up, right? When people are sensitive, we can't charge a very high markup over our costs. We need to charge a low markup. So that's kind of the intuition behind the formula. Does this ignore external factors? It does, right? So our experiment, our survey that they ran is kind of an all else equal experiment for it to be valid, right? We say like, what if we increase the price? How much less would you buy with nothing else changing? If we're raising the price and other things are happening, then this does not reflect, you know, just the elasticity, the price elasticity of demand. It reflects other things too. So our survey needs to be only the price changing, nothing else changing. If you can't run the survey, if all you observe is, you know, data, observational data, then you need to make sure using statistical tools that you're trying to control for everything else that's happening to isolate the effect of the price change, because it's just the price elasticity that you want for this formula. All right, so I'll leave this as an example for you guys to do on your own to practice, but in this new setting, we have a new competitor and Apple runs new surveys and they find different numbers for the quantity change. Marginal cost remains the same. So how do we compute the new price? So I'll leave that for you guys to do. And we'll move on to take a look at these things. So these are coupons, right? We see these a lot of the time in store flyers, online. They're everywhere. What's the purpose of a coupon? Why do businesses offer coupons? Maybe to attract customers, to promote. Yeah, so maybe to get people to try out the products, to induce a trial. So who uses coupons, right? We could do a trial by just reducing the shelf price, right? We could put the item on sale and then someone would see, oh, okay, like, let me try this out, right? So, but we see sales, but we also still see coupons, right? And if coupons were just about getting attention, then you could easily just have a flyer. It says, hey, like, here's the flyer. We're having a sale in store. Come check us out. Come check this product out. But you have a specific thing, which is a coupon, which is if you have the flyer, then you can cut out the coupon or you can load it into your phone and then you'll save, right? But only then, right? So what's the point of a coupon? We can use it to price discriminate. So Jeremy says you can get customers at different price points. Exactly. So let's go back to our earlier example. We have a consumer A with willingness to pay of $6 and B with $4. Now B didn't buy when we were selling at $6, right? Which was kind of inefficient in the sense that if we could sell to them for $4 and just them, then we would still make money because it only costs us $3. If you can charge a different price to consumer B, if you could give them the $2 off coupon, then consumer B would be buying at $4, right? Keeping the shelf price at $6 for consumer A who doesn't have the coupon. So the question is, consumer B has the lower willingness to pay and we want to give them the coupon. Kind of how do we get them the coupon, right? Why, or is it the case that only consumer B is going to end up seeing the coupon? And CGS says kind of something that we're going to talk about in a few slides. Price sensitive people with the lower willingness to pay, they spend the time to gather them. Other people, non-sensitive people, people who don't have the time, they don't spend time to gather the coupons, right? So somehow this idea that some people have time and they're willing to spend it looking for coupons, and these also are the people who have low willingness to pay, allows us to do this kind of only getting the coupons to the people with the low willingness to pay. So this is an example of what's called price discrimination, which happens when different customers pay different prices for the same product, right? So the price charged varies across different people, but not because of different costs. In order to price discriminate, a firm must be able to segment the market into different groups who have different willingnesses to pay, and must also be able to sell to those different segments at the different prices. So there's three kinds of price discrimination. There's perfect price discrimination, which is called first degree. There's quantity discounts, which is second degree price discrimination. And then there's screening, which is third degree price discrimination. So let's start with perfect price discrimination. Perfect price discrimination is when we charge each individual consumer exactly their own willingness to pay for the product. And this is going to extract the maximum amount of profit for the firm. What the firm needs is to know each consumer's willingness to pay, to be able to set a price for each different consumer that's exactly their willingness to pay. And you have to be able to prevent consumers from buying and selling to each other, right? Because if you sold to the consumer with the lowest willingness to pay, and they're able to turn around and sell to a consumer with a higher willingness to pay and undercut the firm, then you're not going to be able to perfectly price discriminate anymore, right? So you need to be able to prevent resale. because these are all very difficult things to do, each one of these three is very difficult. We very rarely achieve perfect price discrimination. Yeah, you need a lot of primary data. But there's kind of other ways. There's ways that you try to gather this primary data. So, flea markets are buying a used car. So when you have when you have people kind of bargaining with you, trying to set the price, that can kind of be a situation where they're trying to get at your exact willingness to pay and charge you that price. Severin says, does Rogers use this method? If you call and complain, they charge you less. That's really interesting. I would say that that's kind of a behavioral pricing. So it's like reverse loyalty pricing. The less loyal you are to Rogers, the more willing you are to just leave, the lower a price they're going to charge you, right? And then the most loyal people, the ones who kind of would never leave, they end up paying a lot more. So I would say that that's kind of a third degree price discrimination, which we'll come to in a second. If your product is sold on a market or an exchange, is it perfect price discrimination? No. So if your product is sold on a market, then there's only one price. There's the market price, right? If we're thinking about, say, stocks, it's just the buying and selling happens at one price. And that's kind of like the market price. So if you're thinking about auctions, though, right, that's kind of closer to perfect price discrimination because you have people bidding on something, and what they're bidding is going to be very close to like their willingness to pay for the product, right? So if you're running an auction, that can be kind of close to perfect price discrimination. Fido gives you a discount when you upgrade the phone and plan with them. Is that the same situation? So that might be something we'll talk about after the break, which is bundling. So we'll come back to that one. Second degree price discrimination is the more you buy, the better price you receive per unit. So paper towels, consumer goods, we see this all the time. The bigger package you buy, the cheaper it is per unit, right? The bigger a box of cereal or pasta you buy, the cheaper it is per unit of weight, right? We think of this as kind of a grocery store phenomenon, but actually it's everywhere. So here we have a company, Wealthsimple, which allows you to invest with them. And here we have kind of the managed account. So you give them money and they invest it for you. You don't invest it yourself. And if you deposit less than $100,000, you have to pay 0.5% for them to manage your account. But if you deposit more than $100,000, you only have to pay 0.4%, right? So the more money you have with them, the cheaper it is to have them invest your money. The last bit is third degree price discrimination. So different prices for different consumer segments, which differ in their willingness to pay for the product. We have two cases: observable segments, like we saw with children and the elderly, and students, say for GO trains. And then we have unobservable segments. So here, with the CN Tower tickets, you can see two observable segments: age and buying online. So if you buy online, that's a segment. I can see how you're accessing my ticket is through the website, not through coming in person. So if you buy online, you get a cheaper price. And if you're a child or a senior, you get a cheaper price. And we can verify that by looking at the ID. So that's fairly straightforward to do. Now, you can't price discriminate to every segment. So some segments of people you need to charge the same price to, right? Everyone should get the same price because you can't discriminate based on some things like gender or race or religion or anything like that, right? So that would be illegal to do, but age is fine, right? So the other option is different segments are unobservable. So that's like with the coupons, and that's a specific type of price discrimination. So when different consumer segments are unobservable, but we know that they have different willingnesses to pay, then we need to be able to capitalize on some kind of relationship between willingness to pay and other characteristics in order to sort of separate out the market, right? So that different segments actually pay different prices. So let's think about coupons, right? For coupons, we know there's people out there who have a high willingness to pay for the product and a low willingness to pay for the products, right? And if all we did was ask them in store, hey, do you have a high willingness to pay? Everyone would say, no, I have a low willingness to pay. Give me the low price, right? So we can't just kind of ask them to show us what's your willingness to pay. But with coupons, what we're capitalizing on is that these people who have a high willingness to pay, they don't have the time or the patience to be looking for coupons to save money on these goods, right? So with coupons, we're getting the low willingness to pay people because they have more time. So we make it so that they can only get the savings if they spend time, right? Finding coupons. Sales have all kinds of reasons why we run sales. You can reduce inventory, you can get people to try out your product, but you can also use sales, and by which I mean you have the sticker price in store and you reduce it so that everyone who comes in store pays that lower price. You can use that to price discriminate, right? And the idea there is, again, you have some people with a high willingness to pay for toothpaste and some people with a low willingness to pay. And you can't just ask them, but you want to sell at different prices. So what you do is you capitalize on the idea that people with the low willingness to pay are also potentially more willing to stockpile, right? So some people have room in their houses that they can buy 10 toothpastes at a time and just store them, right? 10 toothpastes, 10 laundry detergents, 10 bottles of olive oil, right? They can just store it because they buy a lot of it when it's cheap, right? So for these guys, you're basically saying, some of you have a high willingness to pay and you guys are impatient. You're just going to buy when you need it and you don't have room to stockpile. Low willingness to pay, you're saying, okay, you guys are more patient. You're going to wait for there to be a sale and you're going to buy a ton when it's on sale, right? So you're kind of exploring that relationship between patience and willingness to pay. All right, good spot to break. It's 2:03. Let's break until 2:13 and I'll stay on and chat if you guys have any questions. All right, let's get back to it. So before the break, we kind of discussed basic pricing. So setting a single price for a single product, or setting different prices for the same product, but to different people. So now we'll think about more sophisticated pricing. So dynamic pricing, multi-product pricing, and then multi-part pricing, which means kind of multiple prices to the same person for the same products. So dynamic pricing, and this was the content of the survey this week. So dynamic pricing is often applied for new products where firms enter the market with a different starting price than the price they eventually end up with, right? We have basically two common approaches where we're having to change, we're having the price change over time systematically. Price skimming is starting from a high price and then decreasing it over time. And then penetration pricing is starting from a low price and then increasing it over time. So we have examples of both that we can see. So here's Intel. They make computer chips, they make processors. And here we have microprocessor prices from 1993 through 2002. It looks fairly similar, even if we kind of go all the way up to 2021. What do we see? On the y-axis, we have prices. Each of these lines represents a different product, a different processor. And we can see that always they start high and then they decrease over time, right? And sometimes it's very dramatic, right? So for the most recent products, the Pentium 4 starts at $600 in 2001. And then a year later, it's down to $200, right? So price drop of $400, okay? So the prices start high and then they go low. And this is an example of price skimming. Start high, cut the price over time. Here's an example of penetration pricing. So we have this company, Megabus. Megabus provides bus service between different cities in the US, and then they expanded to Canada in 2008. And when they first expanded to Canada and started offering bus service on routes between certain cities, they had a $1 ticket to get to Montreal from Toronto. So you can drive for $1 on one of these buses in 2008, all the way from Toronto to Montreal. And by 2016, the prices start at $10, which is still quite cheap, but definitely higher, right? So this is an example of penetration pricing where we start low and then we go higher and higher over time until we reach some kind of final level, okay? So with new product pricing strategies, price skimming, right? We're starting high and then we're decreasing over time. So there's basically there's kind of two good reasons why you might want to price skim. So if your costs start out really high, but you know that over time you're going to get better, your costs are going to come down, you're going to learn how to make the product better, that you're going to be more efficient, then as your costs go down, your prices will come down too, right? So price skimming might reflect cost side stories where your costs go down as you get better. The other option for price skimming is that it could reflect a desire for the firm to do inter-temporal price discrimination. So what is inter-temporal price discrimination? Well, we know price discrimination is selling to different groups of people with different willingnesses to pay at different prices. Inter-temporal means we achieve that by setting one price for everyone, but by changing it at different points in time. So initially we have a very high price. And so hopefully the people with a high willingness to pay will buy it at that high price. And then later on, we have kind of a low price, and then people are willing to pay later on. People who are kind of low willingness to pay will pay that low price later on. Okay, so here again, what we have though, we can't identify these groups. So we leverage the fact that there's a difference in patience, right? So some people with a very high willingness to pay are more impatient, right? And they're willing to pay more, right? They want the product more. So Jeremy writes, early adopters are willing to pay more, which is true, but it's almost a tautology, right? Like, who is an early adopter? Well, it's someone who's willing to pay more, right? Why are they willing to pay more? Well, because they're an early adopter, right? But what does it mean? Why don't they just wait? For instance, with the computer chips, some people were willing to buy it for $600 instead of just waiting a year for $200, right? Even someone who really likes the chip, why not just wait? Well, it's because their patience level must be different, right? They must be somehow more impatient. They want it sooner, right? The value to them of getting the chip in the future is a lot lower than the value of having it right now, right? So early adopters are people whose consumer perceived value decreases very, very quickly over time for kind of new products, right? They want it early because they're impatient, and their value would drop. Actually, by next year, it would drop below $200, right? They're not willing to wait that long, right? They would lose more by waiting than by just buying it at full price right now. So it's this kind of patience story once again, right? We have impatient people buying it sooner, right? Penetration pricing, we start with a low price and then we increase over time, right? So we increase over time. And why might we want to do this? Well, here's one reason. We may want to induce adoption and gain market share, right? Now, normally when we say we want to gain market share, that's because selling to more people is more profitable, right? If we're making money on everyone that we sell to. But we know from a lot of apps, a lot of startups, that they're losing money on everyone that they sell to, right? Uber was losing money on everyone it served for the longest time. I think maybe they still are, or maybe not. But Spotify is definitely still losing money on everyone they serve, right? So the goal is to just gain market share, even though you're losing money on everyone that you sell to. So why might it be a good idea just to gain market share? Typically, the rationale is network effects, right? So what does that mean? So think about like a social network, right? The more people who use a social network, the more of your friends are on it, the more valuable it is for you to be on it, right? So the value to you increases as more people get on it. So initially you charge a very, very low price so that everyone starts using it. And then over time, because everyone's using it, now people find it more valuable, right? Because you can find all your friends there. So they're willing to pay more in the future, right? So that's kind of the idea there. Gaining market share can be good, even if you're losing money on everyone you sell to, because by gaining that market share, it makes it more valuable for everyone in the future, and you can raise that price in the future, right? Another reason is the competitive side. You may want to just try to keep out your competitors, right? So keep the price low so that no one comes in and enters. And then in the future, when there's no competitors left able to enter, then you can finally raise your price, right? So let's take a look at the survey results. So the survey kind of gave this question about Tesla. They have a new technology for fast charging their cars. And the batteries are of a new type. And the charging stations are of a new type, right? It's a fast charging station. And they're kind of putting the new battery and fast charging technology into this car called the Model Z. And so I asked you guys, what kind of pricing should Tesla engage in for the Model Z? Penetration or market skimming? So most of you said market skimming. So let's take a look at some of the responses. So is John Liu here? Actually, I can see John in the chat here. So John, are you here? All right, John's away from his keyboard. What about Yanfei Wang? Is Yanfei here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Yanfei. So you chose market skimming. So you can explain why you chose that?
Yeah, because I think this new type of battery is new, so I think I should choose a expensive price, and then I can get more profits. So I can use these profits to improve improve the battery, and I can improve the quantity of the battery, so I can get more cars. So I think it's a positive recycle. And
Okay.
then, so gradually the price may be lower and lower, just like this.
Okay, so it's kind of maybe a cost side story where you can take the profits early on and then invest them to become better and better and kind of be more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Thanks, Yanfei.
Thank you.
So Severin, I see your hands up.
Yes, Professor. I have a similar point. I just wanted to say, since it's a new technology, market skimming pricing will allow Tesla to set a higher initial price, attracting buyers that have a strong preference for the product. And then by doing so, they could receive a maximum profit and then gradually reduce it to attract the further tier consumers with a lower willingness to pay. And I just wanted also to add that that since it's a new technology, there are likely no competitors right now. So you could like raise the price and then make as much profit before they enter, or some other companies make the
good. So like a competition story, and you have this story about like there's people out there who have a really high willingness to pay, charge them a high price now, and then lower the price later on. Let me ask you a follow-up. Why do you think why are there these people out there who have like a super high willingness to pay for Tesla and are really impatient? Because for most car companies, we don't really think that there's people like that. So why is it different for Tesla?
Personally, I believe that maybe there are some consumers that want to get something like right away, and that also could increase the price. Like the whole patience thing also, right? Like they know that other companies may develop the same technology and they could just wait and then the price would be lower. But I mean, you could apply this to anything, like even with phones or anything. Like if a new iPhone comes out, there are consumers that want it right away, which is why they pay like the top price. Right. Whereas they could just like wait it out and get a lower price in the future.
So basically there's people out there who treat a Tesla like it's a tech product, like it's a new phone, as opposed to kind of like, a car, which are sort of less considered as a tech product. You less have the kind of these early adopter mentality.
Yeah, I believe so. Well, that's my personal opinion. I'm not sure if that's the correct one.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking for. There's no correct answer here. So thanks for chiming in. So good. Let me have a brief aside. Tesla was in the news lately, in the financial news, for something exciting that happened with them. Does anyone know what's going on with Tesla? One T. What's 1T, Xiaochen?
1 trillion for the total market price. Yeah.
Is that large compared to other car companies?
Yeah, for sure.
I think bigger than all the other ones combined is what I read.
Yeah.
So they have a super high valuation. Does anyone know, like a stock price valuation, what is it? What is it based on? It's based on the idea, either your stock pays dividends. So if the price is really high, it might be because they're paying out a lot of dividends. They have a lot of profit to give out. Or it could be that they're not paying dividends, but it's a growth stock. So you kind of expect it to be even more profitable in the future. So right now, Tesla is not very profitable compared to other car companies. At their current stock price, if you bought their stock and they started paying dividends out of their regular revenue, right, out of their regular profit, it would take you decades to make your money back. Versus like a 5% dividend on most stocks, you'll make your money back, within like 7 or 8 years. So Tesla's price of stock is extremely high, right? So that suggests that people think they're going to be much more profitable in the future, which could come about from them raising their prices, right? So let me ask someone who chose market penetration pricing. And then Boyang, I'll ask you after I've asked, let's see, is Itza Jiang here? All right, no, Itza. Kelsey Xu. Where is Kelsey? You're here. All right, Kelsey, so why did you choose? Okay, you're saying you can type your answer, but use all chat, send it to everyone. So type it in for everyone. And then in the meantime, I'll ask Boyang, you had your hand up. So why did you choose market penetration pricing?
Yeah, so basically I chose market penetration is because like it kind of because like you kind of mentioned that Tesla would be considered as a tech product, stuff like that, right? And it kind of reminds me of like a couple of years ago when iPhone first released, like iPhone 12. Yeah, it was iPhone 12. So like when I first released iPhone 12 and they already implanting their newest chips inside iPhone 12. And then they had another line that says like iPhone 12 Pro and iPhone 12 Pro Max that implants even like better technology. So like I was recalling that kind of idea for market penetration. So basically we can just like, since like Tesla is not as profitable as the other like gas burning selling vehicles and like other car companies. So I was like thinking if we can like using Model Z as like their new entry level electronic like vehicles, and we usually low price to take the market, and after we have a certain like after we have a really good growth, then we like start to raise the price. And like the case says, since Model Z is like their newest technology, I feel like Tesla actually has other like product lines such as like Tesla Model 3, Model Y, Model X. And I feel like this model can also be upgraded, but with like the other like technology on top of it. And models would just be their basic model with new technology, just like what Apple did.
Perfect. Awesome. Very good answer. So kind of the idea is we want to use penetration pricing to gain the market share, like to gain, because it's a technology product, we want to get adoption. And if we can become kind of the dominant technology in the market, then eventually we can raise prices based on the idea that, everyone's using it. Now it's kind of more valuable to everyone. And we can kind of upgrade the other vehicles with the fast charging as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's
perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks, Boyang. And then I see, so Kelsey chose, increase market share rapidly. So, justify that by saying that, let's make it clear. So with the technology product that the Model Z is, the more people use it, the more charging stations there are going to be. The more charging stations there are, the more valuable it will be to use it. So you have kind of the network feedback there. So with penetration pricing, you can get more cars on the road and more charging stations out there. And then once there's a lot of them out there, now it's more valuable to have a Model Z because you can charge it almost anywhere. A Model Z, you can charge it almost anywhere. So then you can raise the price, right? So that's maybe a justification for penetration pricing. And Jeremy says deter competitors. In addition to kind of like the more charging stations dynamic, you also have this dynamic of you want to keep competitors out. tons of competitors entering the EV space. Tesla was there first. Maybe they want to try to protect their market share. Perfect. So thanks everyone. Yeah, this was good. Good responses. I think it's an interesting choice to have to make. You do have to go one way or the other though, right? So which product pricing strategies to use? There's kind of the reasons that we talked about already, the cost and demand side things. But there's kind of some additional reasons you might go one way or the other. Price skimming is often used for products that are bought only once, whereas penetration pricing is often used for products that are bought more than once. Price skimming is often used when a big group of consumers in your market think the product is really like special in some way, so they're willing to pay a lot for it, versus penetration pricing. Sometimes when the product is not perceived as special, you see penetration pricing more often. And then lastly, price skimming, yeah, in less competitive environments, you typically see it, versus penetration pricing, you often see it in more competitive environments. Howhen says, is this an opportunity for other car companies if you have more charging stations? That's a great point. If the charging station is proprietary, so you can only use a Tesla car with the Tesla fast charging station, then it's not an opportunity for other car companies. But if the government has a regulation that says, no, your charging stations have to be able to be used by any EV, by any car, then for Tesla, making more and more charging stations just means that it's becoming more and more attractive for their competitors to come in. So it depends on whether you can protect your technology or not. All right, so that's dynamic pricing. Next, we'll talk about not multi-part pricing, but pricing multiple products. So here we see some Netflix TV shows. And with Netflix, you pay one price per month and you get access to all of their shows, right? So you can see this scary show, Midnight Mass. You can see this documentary show, Fire. You can see this family sci-fi show, Lost in Space, right? But why don't they just offer cheaper kind of channels, right? Why wouldn't Netflix say, hey, pay $2 a month, you'll get all of our scary shows. Pay $2 a month, you get all of our sci-fi shows, right? So you can just pick what you want, as opposed to kind of forcing everyone to buy everything, right? So why do you think Netflix puts everything together in one big bundle versus separating things out into different segments, different products for different segments? So there's a lot of competition. Separating could lower total revenue, but they've always done this, right? So even when there was no competition, this was their business model. Not everyone wants a scary movie, etc. So they may not buy that bundle. So I agree. I mean, I think I agree that not everyone wants each type of thing, but in that sense, then isn't it kind of like it would make more sense to give the scary shows at like a high price only to the people who are willing to watch the scary show, and then the sci-fi shows only to the people who are willing to pay a high price, instead of kind of mixing everyone all together. So people can have various preferences. One day they may want to watch a scary movie and the next watch a comedy. That's true. So maybe people have a preference for variety. Maybe you want to make consumers, feel like the product is more valuable. That might make them more willing to buy. Trevor says it may depend on the amount of people in that market in terms of the tailored channels. That's true. So up until this point in the course, though, I think we've kind of had the sense that like finding a segment and figuring out their willingness to pay, like kind of want to sell to the people who have the most benefit, right? So why are we selling scary TV shows to people who don't really like it as part of a bundle? The idea is like Netflix's thought, or the way that Netflix would say this is like, we're giving a discount, right? You get more stuff for kind of cheaper if we put it all together, right? But we know that kind of they're not doing it to be nice. They're doing it because it must be profitable somehow. So let's look at how it can be profitable. So let's look at two consumers, A and B, and they like different TV shows. A likes comedy. So their willingness to pay for a streaming service that was just comedy would be $5 a month. And their willingness to pay for a streaming service that's just sci-fi is only $2 a month, right? So with this person, they like comedy, they don't like sci-fi. If you put them together, they would be willing to pay $7 a month, right? 5 plus 2. Consumer B is kind of the opposite. They don't like comedy, so they would only pay $2 a month for just a comedy channel, like Netflix comedy. They would be willing to pay $4 a month for a sci-fi only channel. So together, they're willing to pay $6. Okay. So if we sell individually, I claim we're going to make $9 in revenue, right? So where does that come from? So we're saying, okay, we have a comedy channel. What price should we charge? And there's basically two options. $2, and we would sell to both people, in which case we'd make $4 total, or $5, in which case we would just sell to consumer A, and we would make $5, right? So better to make $5 by selling just to consumer A than $4 by selling to both A and B at $2 a pop. So we'll just sell to consumer A at $5. That's where the 5 comes from. That's our profit from the comedy channel because we're selling it at $5. Sci-fi channel, if we sell it at $4, then we'll just sell to consumer B and we'll be making $4. But if we sell it at $2, we'll be selling it to both A and B, and we'll still be making $4. So it doesn't really matter, right? Let's say we're just selling it at a price of $4 to just consumer B. So we have 5 plus 4, that's $9 in revenue. Make sense? We're doing the best we can with the individual channels to each group. What if we bundle? How much do we make if we sell these two channels together as a bundle? Ife says 12. I agree. Yeah, where does 12 come from? Six plus 6, right? So we have two options. We could sell at $7, the whole bundle, and just sell to consumer A. Or we could sell at $6 for the whole bundle, and then we would sell to A and B. And so, of course, we're going to sell at $6, sell to A and B, and we're going to make 12. 2 times 6. So we're making a lot more money with the bundle. And with the bundle, are we forcing anyone to kind of pay more than they're willing to pay? No, we're not. Are we offering kind of a discount relative to what it would be if they were separate? Yes, right? It would be $5 for comedy and either $2 or $4 for sci-fi. But that's already $7, could be $9 if we bought them both separately. So it looks like it's a discount, right? If we're selling them both together for $6. But actually we're making more money, right? The firm is making more money. Now, is this general? Or did I just cook up some numbers? So the answer is it's actually fairly general, that bundling is more profitable. Actually, it's almost always more profitable for a company selling multiple products to bundle if you can't perfectly price discriminate, if you can't price discriminate. If you can price discriminate, it's better to do that. But if you can't, if you have to set single prices for each of these products, better to bundle. Okay. Why? Because for a bundle, the demand curve is almost always flatter. Okay. Why does that matter? When you have flat demand, then as you lower the price, you get a lot more sales, right? With a very flat demand curve, I lower the price a little bit and I go very far to the right. So I increase quantity by a lot, right? So gaining sales requires only small price reductions. In general, it's going to be the case that bundles have flatter demand curves than individual products, okay? That's kind of like something that comes from mathematical properties of how we typically observe people's valuations out in the data, right? Given the distribution of people's valuations, when we kind of add things up and look at the demand curve for that, it's almost always going to be flatter, okay? And so it's almost always going to be better to bundle. If we can price discriminate, that can be better, right? If we perfectly price discriminate, then, you know, the bundle we make 12, and with the non-bundle we make 9, but with the price discrimination, we make 13, right? We charge for consumer A, $5 for comedy, $2 for sci-fi. For consumer B, we charge them $2 for comedy and $4 for sci-fi, right? So we extract all of the value possible, right? So with perfect price discrimination, we can do better. But you know, that's, as we said, that's kind of hard to do. And bundling is fairly easy to do. So bundling things together can often be better in terms of more profitable. All right, so that's pricing multiple products. Let's look at our kind of last type of pricing, which is multi-part pricing. So Costco and Sobeys, they both sell groceries and some other stuff, but mostly groceries. So what's the difference between these two stores? With Sobeys, anyone can go in, but the price per unit is a bit high. With Costco, you have to pay a membership fee to get in, but once you're in, the prices are a bit lower per unit, right? You're getting discounts on the stuff you're buying when you think about it in terms of per paper towel or per box of spaghetti. So Costco's pricing strategy is what's called a two-part tariff. Two-part tariff is an entry fee plus a per unit fee. Right? So you have an entry fee and a per unit fee. The entry fee, that's the membership fee. The per unit fee, you still need to pay for groceries. So you're still paying per unit. You don't need to have a positive per unit fee, right? So for instance, if you go to Canada's Wonderland, you pay to get access, but then you don't pay per ride, right? You pay just to get in, and then all the rides are free. Yeah. Or with the gym, you know, you pay your monthly membership fee. And once you're in, you don't have to pay to use the equipment. You can use it all as much as you want for free. So two-part tariffs cover membership fee type pricing. When should you use a two-part tariff? When does it make sense? If you have kind of wealthier, more patient consumers with higher usage rates, right? So why wealthy? Why patient? Well, they need to be able to afford the membership fee. They need to be patient because you only really make back your money over time, right? You have a big upfront cost, and then you make it back over time by buying in bulk and getting lower prices on all the stuff. And higher usage rates, you know, typically you need to be using it quite a bit to make back your money from the membership fee, right? So if you're thinking about using two-part tariff style pricing, these are the kinds of things you should think about in terms of your target market. Cell phone service looks kind of similar to a two-part tariff. You pay a fixed fee and you get a certain amount of data for free, right? But on a lot of recent plans, you still pay per megabyte once you exceed your data cap, right? So you pay your membership, your monthly fee, your subscription, then you pay 0 for the first, whatever, 10 gigabytes. And then once you exceed 10 gigabytes, you start to pay, right? That's a 3-part tariff. You have an entry fee, you have a per unit fee up to a particular point, and then you'll have a higher per unit fee after that point. So why do you have cell phone service implementing a 3-part tariff? Well, they use it to discourage overconsumption, right? What is overconsumption? If you have a lot of people using a lot of data on the cell phone network, then the experience gets worse for everyone, right? Because the bandwidth can only handle so many users. So with 3-part tariffs, you kind of discourage the most extreme users from using a ton of data. And so then you're basically trying to make sure the service is still good for everyone else. So that's kind of our special pricing. We have dynamic, we have bundling, we have 2-part, and we have 3-part tariffs. Okay. There's another type of pricing, which you guys should know, especially if you're doing kind of an app as your project. And that's 2-sided pricing. Okay. So 2-sided pricing comes into effect when you're not just a company selling, but you're a platform trying to bring together buyers and sellers to interact on your platform. So you can think about Uber. Uber is an example of a platform where they need to bring in drivers who are kind of selling rides, and then riders who are buying rides, right? Uber doesn't provide the rides. They just bring together drivers and riders. Older example, shopping mall, right? Shopping mall brings in stores, right? Because stores want to sell to the buyers, to shoppers, and then shoppers come in if there are stores. So you can see with platforms, people only want to use it if there's enough people on the other side. And what I mean by that is drivers only want to be on Uber if there's enough riders. Otherwise, they'll just go on Lyft and offer rides on Lyft. And riders only want to use Uber if there's enough drivers. Again, otherwise they'll just catch a cab or go on Lyft. Shopping mall, I only want to go to the mall if there's a lot of stores there, right? Stores only want to be and rent in that mall if they know there's going to be a lot of buyers there. So with platform, you kind of need to bring both sides in. And so you need to be careful in how you set your prices. Simple rule is you have a lower price to the more price sensitive side, right? So a price sensitive side, I mean, the side that would be more willing to leave the platform if you raise the price on them. Okay, so for instance, shopping mall, you don't pay to go to the mall. You can go to the mall for free, but stores pay to be in the mall, right? They pay rent. Yeah. So the more price sensitive side is the consumers, right? Consumers, if there was a fee to get into the mall, no one would go to the mall because it's very competitive, right? People can go a lot of places to shop, right? So the more price sensitive side has a 0 price in the shopping mall case. You know, with Uber, both sides are kind of a little price sensitive. So they kind of take their fee from the middle, right? They get a share of the transaction price of each time a ride is taken, right? Jeremy asks, would a social network be 2-sided pricing? I think it kind of depends on the social network. I think most social networks are only one-sided. So in the sense that the more of my friends who are on it, the more I want to be on it. But that's just kind of like people want to be on it because other people are on it, right? So something like a video game console would be like a 2-sided situation where I only want to buy it because there's a lot of software for it. And then the software manufacturers only want to make software for it because there's a lot of people who own it. So you kind of need like those two groups that are interacting through the platform. So with a social network, so like, okay, so YouTube. So good, yeah, I think YouTube is more so a platform, right? So YouTube hosts videos. People are only going to want to post their videos to YouTube if people are there to watch it. People are only going to visit YouTube if there's videos there for them to watch. So yeah, I would agree that would be kind of a two-sided platform. How does YouTube price? Who pays? We pay, right? People who watch videos pay by watching advertisements, right? And then people who create content on YouTube, they earn money from YouTube, right? Okay. So up till now, we've talked all about this stage in the supply chain, which is a retail store or kind of a consumer-facing store selling to consumers, right? What about the rest of the supply chain? Distributors selling to retailers, manufacturers selling to distributors. So very briefly, these prices are not set with the demand curve. They're set through negotiation. So how do two businesses decide on a price when they're negotiating? Well, the idea is two businesses are only going to work together if they can create value, right? If they can create profit. So when you're thinking about negotiating with your partner, you're thinking, oh, okay, my price that I set is going to be a price that allows us to split the profit that we create together. Now, if we don't come together, then my business partner could go somewhere else, right? That's what's called their best alternative to a negotiated agreement, or BATNA, right? It's also known as your partner's outside option. So if they can make almost as much profit with someone else as they can with you, right? Or they could make more profit with someone else than with you, then you need to offer them a very aggressive price. You need to offer them a bigger share of the profit you would create together in order to keep them working with you, right? So the better their outside option, the better price, the better value proposition you need to offer to get them to do business with you, okay? So we'll leave the exercise. I won't be posting because that's kind of an in-class thing, but the basics of negotiation: know your partner's outside option, their best alternative. Reveal your best alternative if it's credible, right? So whatever your best alternative is, if you can prove it, then you should reveal it, okay? And lastly, people prefer fair pricing, even in business, right? Okay, so very last topic, price matching. So this is a phenomenon that's become more popular with the rise of online retail. So price matching is the idea that a store, almost always a retail store, will tell you, if you can find a better price, we'll match it or we'll beat it, okay? So why would a firm do price matching? Well, you're trying to get people to buy your product who would otherwise not be willing to, who would go elsewhere, right? So are there any drawbacks? Yes, right? If there's some people who would have paid full price, but now you're doing price matching, they're going to pay the lower price, right? So when you're trying to do price matching, again, it's kind of a price discrimination thing. There's still people out there who are willing to pay full price, and you want them to pay full price. But there's also people out there who would be competitive shoppers who would look around, and they would buy from Amazon if the price is lower. So you want to get them by doing price matching, but only them. You don't want price matching for people who would be paying full price. So how do you kind of do that price discrimination? So, Best Buy starts price discrimination because of Amazon, right? Because, Amazon can offer lower prices because they don't have all this overhead. They don't have stores. They don't have, as much inventory to kind of just maintain. They don't have to pay all these, skilled employees to know stuff about the products. And Amazon's prices are a threat because you can just order them online. So for Amazon, one thing that kept happening was people would go to Best Buy, try out the product, learn about it, and then once they found one they liked, they would just buy it at the low price from Amazon, right? So that was what was known as showrooming. people treating the Best Buy store as just a place to experience the product and then just buy it from Amazon. So price matching, what they did was advertise price matching, but only on their website. Okay. Not in the stores. So if you go into a Best Buy store, there won't be a big sign that says we match prices. You won't see that anywhere. If you go online to Best Buy, then you will see price matching guarantee. The idea is for people who don't look around at other stores, we still want them to pay full price. So they're never going to know that price matching is an option. So they're going to go into the store and they'll pay full price. For people who would have showroomed, who would have come in, looked around, and then bought it cheaper somewhere else, they know from going online, because they're those competitive shopper types, they've already visited the Best Buy website, they know that they can price match. So they're going to come in and they're going to pay a lower price by matching it with the Amazon price. So this online price matching is another way of price discrimination, right? Between people who are competitive shoppers and people who are sort of more impatient and they're just willing to pay full price by going into the store. All right, so that's it for today. Before I wrap up, there's a progress report that's going to be due November 11th. That has to do with your projects. I would have discussed that in meetings with you about what I'm expecting. So that's custom for each group based on where you are and based on what we talked about. Okay, so 1 page, double spaced, due on the 11th. Project presentations are coming up. Those are in the 2 last weeks of the class. What that's going to be is you guys having slides, sharing them on Zoom, and talking through a presentation, which is going to be about 10 to 12 minutes, where you'll have to kind of create a professional, polished sort of outline of your marketing plan, right? So here's kind of a sample presentation outline in terms of time breakdown that you can look at for when you start creating your presentations. And the grading rubric is on Quirkus as well. So if you want to take a look at where the marks are going to come from, you can check it out there. All right, so that's it for this week. If there's any questions, I'll hang around and chat for a bit. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.